Hi everyone, I've got some things to show you today. When I go somewhere special, I like to get something that reminds me of that place. They are called souvenirs and they help us remember that special time. So here I've got what I call popcorn. We once went to a beach that was covered in these. They looked like big chunky pieces of popcorn and we called it Popcorn Beach. And every time I look at these, I remember that lovely time we went to that beach. And here I have a little statue of a lion and a lamb. And I got this when we went to Israel a few years ago. And this little thing I've got here, a little teddy bear. My friend bought me this when I passed my driving test many years ago, but every time I look at it, I remember that that came from her. So a souvenir reminds us of something that has been a special time in our lives. Maybe you've got some special things from a holiday or somewhere you've been, and you can show me later on Zoom if you like. Now, do you remember what we've been learning about Samuel? The first week we learnt about how Hannah was really sad because she didn't have any children. She prayed and made a promise to God, didn't she? And God gave her a little boy called Samuel. Hannah kept her promise and gave him back to work for God with Eli in the temple. Last week we found out how God spoke to Samuel even though he was really young, and how God still speaks to us today through the words and stories in the Bible. God continued to speak to Samuel many times, and he was able to give messages to the people. One day God's people were in danger. Their enemies, that's the people who didn't like them, were coming to fight them, and the soldiers were really strong and nasty. God's people were scared, so they went to Samuel to ask him to pray for them, because they knew that only God could help them. Samuel led the people in worshipping God, and while they were praying, the enemy soldiers came closer and closer. They were getting ready to fight. Do you think God heard their prayers? Yes, he did. When the enemy soldiers were ready to fight God's people, God sent some really loud thunder. Do you know what thunder is? Yeah, it's when the clouds in the sky crash together and they make a really loud noise. Well, this thunder that God sent was so loud that the enemy soldiers became very frightened, and God's people were able to chase them away. God's people won that battle. We need to remember that God helps his people when they're in trouble, and you can pray and ask God to help you anytime, at home, at school, in the playground or anywhere, praying the words out loud or quietly inside your heart. After God's people won this battle, Samuel did not want them to forget what God had done. So he took a really big stone and he stood it up and he said, "The Lord has helped us." There was nothing special about that stone. It was just a little bit like our holiday souvenirs. It was to remind the people that God had helped them when they prayed. Now, as time went by, Samuel grew old, and the people started to grumble. They said, "Other countries have kings to lead us. We want to have a king to lead us too." Do you think Samuel was pleased with them for saying this? No, he wasn't. He was sad and angry with the people. God was their king, and he had helped them fight against their enemies. But the people didn't want God as their king. Samuel prayed and God spoke to him again, but the answer wasn't what he expected. God told Samuel to give the people a king. God said that it was up to the people if they wanted to trust him or not. Who do you think has more power, God or a king? You know, sometimes God answers our prayers in ways that we do not expect. But we know that we can always trust God. Samuel always trusted God, even when the people didn't. So maybe this week you could find a nice stone or rock from your garden and write or paint on it, "Trust in God," to help you remember today's Bible story and remember that you can pray to God anytime as well. Now, you older ones will need to look this story up in your Bible today to help you with your activity sheets. You'll find it in 1 Samuel chapter 7 and chapter 8. I hope you have fun doing your activity sheets, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.